Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cloud Tool Time, the 8th edition of our webinar series. My name is Brian King. I'm the Community Manager for the Eclipse Cloud Development Working Group, Cloud Dev Tools Working Group, rather. And for this talk, I'm delighted to have Mario Loriedo. Mario is the Eclipse Che project lead, amongst other roles. And he's here to talk today about Eclipse Che and GitHub Codespaces. So, I'm sure here on Tool Time or elsewhere you've heard about Eclipse Che. I hope so. If not, you will today. But for GitHub Codespaces, this is a new feature that they have in beta right now. It's going to be going into production soon. And Mario's kind of going to introduce us to maybe some of the commonalities and some of the differences between these two tools. On the surface of things, they look very similar. They have an in-browser web front end. They have a containerized back end. So definitely they share a lot of things in common. But Mario's going to kind of take a deeper dive into both and tell us about them. So thanks, Mario. Take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks a lot for having me, and hello everyone. So yeah, I will talk about Eclipse Che and GitHub Codespaces, and I would like to start with a disclaimer. So as Brian said, I'm the project co-lead for Eclipse Che. So my point of view is the point of view of somebody that has been working on Eclipse Che for the last 4 years and a half. And I have access to GitHub Codespaces, the beta. So I've been reviewing it because I'm fairly interested in that. But yeah, of course, my point of view is be it as a bias because I'm working on Eclipse Che. So let's start with from the beginning. So for whoever don't know what exactly Codespaces, GitHub Codespaces, and Eclipse Che are, we'll start with a definition. So that's the definition that is in the GitHub Codespaces documentation. So they say that it's a configurable online development environment hosted by GitHub and powered by Visual Studio Code that allows you to develop entirely in the cloud. So that means that it runs in the cloud. It's hosted by GitHub, but is actually Visual Studio Code running in the backend, and then you access it through your browser from it. And currently, it's in limited beta, and it's subject to change. I don't have any information on now when it will be actually completely public and general available. But yeah, so I will talk about the beta. I will do some demo about the beta from what I can see today. For Eclipse Che, what is Eclipse Che? So Eclipse Che is it offers a Kubernetes native development environment, and Eclipse TIA is the default IDE of Che development environments, and developers only need a web browser to access a feature-rich IDE and benefit from similar look and feel and shared extensions with Visual Studio Code. So that's a definition of Eclipse Che. So it's I think that beyond all those words, I would like to show you what it looks like. So that's GitHub Codespaces. I'm actually in my browser. I can just open this in another tab, and it will actually render something that is really similar to is actually Visual Studio Code, but is not running as a desktop application, but it's running in my browser tab. So I can use all the shortcuts that I'm used to. I can install my extensions. I can search for code. I can use the command palette. For example, if I want to change the theme, I can just use that for. Doesn't look like it's working, but maybe something else. Yeah, doesn't look it, but anyway, it may be buggy a little bit, so it's not as stable as Visual Studio Code is, but it's really powerful. So and even if I'm working on Che all the day, I really appreciate the work that has been done to port Visual Studio Code that is running as a desktop application, as an Electron application, as a completely web application. So that's Visual Studio Code, so the Codespaces, and that's actually Che. So you can see the look and feel is really, so it's really similar to Visual Studio Code, because here the IDE that is actually running in the backend is Eclipse Che, that is really similar to Visual Studio Code. So I can here as well, I can have a palette, and so I have a command for Git or for whatever. It is, we'll see that, but it is actually compatible with Visual Studio Code extensions. And yeah, you see that we have the Java Visual Studio Code extension that is actually running here. And I mean, it's a fully featured IDE as a Visual Studio Code on the desktop. And the cool thing about that is that you can just click on a link and it opens. So both of them are really easy to start. You don't have to install any dependency locally. It's just you don't only need your browser. So I will get back to the slides, and I will actually start talking about what those two projects have in common. So both of them are actually workspace servers that provision cloud IDEs. So one-click development environments. And I would like to show you that the power of that with what we, so for example, with that button. So I have a gist here. This actually will, if I click here, that will start. That will start my IDE. So it will start a workspace. So it's started. So I've already another workspace running here. So it's failing to start, but it's just with one click, I start my IDE. That's really powerful. Here we see that's Che, and that's another IDE. So we're supporting IntelliJ IDE, but so the concept is the same. You actually click on a button, it starts the IDE. So that is common to both. Both are with just the click of a button, you are able to start a development environment. Then there are the other things that they have in common is that they are software-defined IDE. So it's possible with one JSON or YAML file to define the features of the development workspace. So you can specify the configuration of the IDE, or in the case of Che, you can also specify what IDE you want to run in your workspace. You can specify the images. So since both are running in containers, you can define what are actually the containers that are running, and all other features like extensions that you want to load in your workspace. And that makes those environments repeatable, so that one team can share the same dev file or dev container JSON, and they will be able to start from day one. A new developer in the team will be able to use that definition of the workspace to start a development environment, and not losing time to install dependencies and configure everything to be able to run and debug an application. So dev container JSON and dev file, those are like two different formats, but basically they are for the same scope. So defining a repeatable workspace. Both of them use IDEs that are extensible via Visual Studio Code extensions. So, for example, the Java language server, the Java extensions, you can use the same exactly extension on both platforms. So on Codespaces and on Che, and you will have the same result. So it will provide you code completion and all the Java language features. We'll talk about that, but of course, Che has much more limited support. It doesn't have the latest API, and it doesn't have access to the marketplace of Microsoft Marketplace of the extensions. So it supports less extensions, but we are in Che implementing, so in TIA, actually, Che TIA, we are implementing the Visual Studio Code extension API. So we support Visual Studio Code extensions. The fourth thing that they have in common is that they are secure development environment, in the sense that the source code and the developer tools never have to transit through the developer laptop. So that means that there is no risk to actually get the code to go outside from the cloud. It's in the cloud, it's not in the laptop, and cannot get lost if the laptop is stolen. Or development tools don't need to be installed, so a developer doesn't need to install locally tools for development. That means that all the tools are running in the cloud. So they're more controllable. So that's makes it like interesting for enterprises that want to have secure development environment. Both of them exist as online services. So if you go on github.dev, you will have access to Codespaces. And for Che, there is an instance of Che that is hosted by Red Hat, and that is workspaces OpenShift.com. There are other online instances of Che. It's not the only one, but it's like the largest one with with the latest updates of Che. Then it's just a joke, but they are a very similar product name. So the product for Che from Red Hat is called Code Ready Workspaces, and GitHub is GitHub Codespaces. So yeah, that's a curious thing. So now let's go. I've talked about the similar things, but they're not the same. They have different features, and these are the main differences. GitHub Codespaces is an online service only, and Eclipse Che is actually an online service. There are online instances for it, but it's actually an open source project that you are able to deploy on premises, on private or public cloud, or even locally. You can use on whatever. You only need a Kubernetes cluster to be able to deploy Eclipse Che. So wherever you can deploy a Kubernetes cluster, you will be able to deploy Che. Another difference that makes some difference on when you use it is that GitHub Codespaces is using a fat container. So a workspace is actually one container that has all the tools, all the dependencies for the Visual Studio Code extensions that are needed, and all the dependency to run Visual Studio Code itself. So you have Visual Studio Code, the extensions, everything, all these services are running in the same containers. That's an approach that is really similar to a VM, and it's something that developers are really used to it. And it's how actually Visual Studio Code runs on local machines. So that has no difference based on I mean, as a separation of isolation of the IDE from the extensions and from the runtimes of the development tools and developer runtimes. On the other end, for Eclipse Che, we're actually taken the container approach completely. So we've decided to actually run one service per container or something like that. So we don't have exactly one service per container, but whatever makes sense. We try to isolate the IDE from the extensions, and actually you can run if you have an extension that you want to run that has a particular dependency that is not installed in your main container, you can run a sidecar that actually is a container that only has the dependency for that extensions. It is actually augmenting your IDE without modifying the IDE container or the user tooling container. So those are like two different approach. And I want just to show what does that mean. It's so
Mario.
Yeah.
Sorry, before you continue with that demo, a quick question has come in from Venkat, who asks, what's the relation essentially between, local VS Code instance and the online one. The question is, GitHub Codespaces is online only, but users can open it using their locally installed VS Code instance. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, that's correct. So when you start, actually, if I try to open,
because for me, I thought the answer was different, because you have your local VS Code, which is a desktop application, but the VS Code running in GitHub Codespaces is an in-browser version. So
yeah. You can share actually the. I haven't explored that a lot, but you can when you have Codespaces enabled. If you go, for example, I've opened one repository here, and if you do like I have this extra menu item open with Codespaces. So it says I don't have any active Codespace for that GitHub repository. So we'll create a new one. So it says that I'm reached the. So I will actually need an existing Codespace. So we'll remove this one. And what is then after that? The thing that it asks me is that I can also open this Codespace on my desktop. That means that actually I can connect my local IDE, my local Visual Studio Code with that instance of Codespace. So that's one of the. So you can already before that you were able to run remote instances of Visual Studio Code, and that integrates well with that.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So I was saying that basically if you look at, I will make it bigger here, not too big. Like that. So if I go here, you see I have a lot of processes that I'm running, and one of those is like Docker init, that is actually something that is an bootstrapper of a container that actually will run multiple processes. You have also SSH here, so you have a lot of things running here. So it's a container, but it's kind of is like used as a VM. So you have a lot of processes. Whereas if I do the same in Codespaces here, in Eclipse Che, let me try to do that. Where it's will actually open a terminal. And if I do like that, I make it a little bit bigger, and you see that the processes are really limited here, and it's actually the same user, and it's not root. So we'll talk about that later. But it's like a different philosophical approach, and probably both have their benefit, but yeah, I think that probably something in the middle will be the ideal thing. So that's one difference. So another difference is that the infrastructure. So those containers are actually running, and so for GitHub Codespaces, the containers are running as Azure VMs. So at least that was something that that was clear when GitHub Codespaces was actually Visual Studio Code Online. You could actually see and manage those VM. Now everything is transparent from a user point of view. You don't actually see or need to have an Azure account to start them. So I mean that's but those are like VMs, and that's something not open. So you cannot. I have no idea how actually I would be able to provision that on another cloud or in an enterprise cloud. On the other end, for Eclipse Che, the infrastructure is any Kubernetes cluster. So it's the Che provisioner. So the Che server that provision Che workspaces is able to talk to the Kubernetes API and is able to start a workspace, and so to ask Kubernetes to provision the workspace on one node of its cluster. The last difference is that GitHub Codespaces is under the control of one company. So it's Visual Studio Code is open source. There are some components that are open source, but even if they are open source, they are not vendor neutral. So there are still the Git repository, and everything is controlled by one company. On the other end, Eclipse Che is vendor neutral. There is a vendor neutral governance that is actually managed by the Eclipse Foundation. So it's safer for companies to contribute to Eclipse Che than it is to contribute to Visual Studio Code. And for Codespaces, the code that actually provision those workspaces is not open source, so it's not even possible to contribute or to read the code. So now I would like to go a little bit deeper on some of the aspects that I like on both Codespaces and Eclipse Che. And I will start with Codespaces. So first thing is something that it's really cool, because a lot of projects today have a Docker file, and developers are more and more demanding for being able to use Docker. So they want to have Docker as one of their development tools. So to be able to build a container and even run it for testing purposes, or just to deploy and run their application. So that's something that is possible. So I will briefly demo that. So if I do that, you can see that Docker is actually here. I don't know what version is it, but yeah, that's fairly recent one. It's 1 month ago. So you have so at least that's fairly recent one. You can also, if I try to Docker PS, I can see that that is actually able to talk with the server side. It's possible to there is no container running right now, but that's that's so I know that I'm able to talk with the Docker daemon because I'm asking if I can list containers here. So that means that there is a socket, Docker socket that is mounted. We can also, I think that it's possible when doing mount, see what are the things that are mounted here. So that's pretty interesting. And there should be the Docker, the USR. I don't know. That's if this one. That's the varlib Docker. Probably that's how is it mounted. So there are a lot of things are mounted here. You can see that, and that those things provide a lot of features, and one of those is the possibility to run Docker. For Che, that's not actually possible by default. We'll see that, but it's more because it's a kind of a security feature that we run the processes as unprivileged users. So it's not possible to mount the Docker socket. So it's not possible to run Docker. I mean, if that's the default configuration. So it's possible if configuring Che to run containers as privileged containers. That's possible, but that's something that we don't actually support active supporting, and so it's kind of we let users to configure that. The other thing that Codespaces has is Visual Studio Code Live Share. So it's possible to share a workspace with a co-worker. Visual Studio Code Live Share is a Visual Studio Code extension that is possible to install in Visual Studio Code. And you can install it in Codespaces as well, and you will be able with that to share your terminal or your editor. So that makes it possible to do pair programming using Visual Studio Code. We don't have such a feature, such a capability with Che. Visual Studio Live Share is not an open source. It's not open source. We don't support it in Che. I mean the Visual Studio Code extension. The other great thing is that they run the latest and greatest Visual Studio Code. So that means that it supports the latest Visual Studio Code extension because it has the latest Visual Studio Code API. And the look and feel is exactly the one that you are experiencing with the desktop Visual Studio Code. So that's really cool. We have access. So when running Codespaces, you have access to a Visual Studio Code marketplace. So that's not. So we'll already talk about that. That's not a surprise. And the other cool thing, and that if you have a dot file GitHub repository, that will be automatically used by Codespaces, and those dot files will actually be provisioned inside your Codespace development environment. So you will have, if you have defined some aliases or some functions, etc., that you want to have from your command line, you will be able to have those automatically. So these are like all those things are really cool things that I like about Codespaces. So let's see about what I like about Che. So first of all, it's that Che is enterprise ready. So we already talked about the fact that it's possible to install Che on-prem, so in enterprise cloud environments, and Che is actually supports air gap, so it's possible to install in clusters that do not have access to the internet. It's also possible to use. It works well with a custom TLS certificate. So if a company has its own TLS certificate that is not one of the trusted certificates that are trusted by the JVM or by other tools, we're able to inject the TLS certificates, to try the trusted certificates of the company certificates, so that every tool in the workspace is able actually to trust those company certificates. We also support private Git repository, like Git services like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and whatever Git, just the Git protocol, the Git SSH protocol, whatever Git repository has you have access with the Git SSH protocol, will able to use it using SSH keys. So those are things, and other things that are like the support for container registries. So we're able to use containers that are published on private container registries. So those are things that are really done for enterprise users. The other cool thing is, so I've shown that before, that we are able to run not only TIA, that is really similar to Visual Studio Code, but we are also able to run other IDEs. So IntelliJ is one of those, but Coder is another one. We have a POC for the Eclipse, so we're able to run Eclipse in a container and access it from the browser. Those are like things that we want to do more and more, because we see that IDE vendors that are actually supporting more and more. So like IntelliJ, but even Microsoft with Visual Studio Code, they are supporting running their IDE remotely and accessing them through the browser. So as soon as there is a good web IDE, we want to support that. We want to be able to support that, so that users are able to choose. Yeah, Brian.
Mario, a quick question has come in about the first point here, enterprise ready, from Olivier Berger. He asks, enterprise ready, is that with or without Red Hat's offering?
No, it's so to be clear, I'm talking here about the Eclipse Che, the open source Eclipse Che project. Then there is Red Hat Code Ready Workspaces that has those features as well. So what Code Ready Workspaces, so the feature that are on Code Ready Workspaces are on Eclipse Che as well. So we don't have anything extra in Code Ready or in Red Hat Code Ready Workspaces with respect of features. So everything that is here, air gap, custom TLS certificate, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, everything is in Eclipse Che. The Red Hat product is actually provides support, so it has that. And the other thing is that we change the images, the base images of the containers to be Red Hat images. So we don't run Alpine images, for example, on Code Ready Workspaces.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's great.
So IDE agnostic, and the other thing is that it's fully open. So everything is open source, every components of Che, and the strategic decisions are discussed with the community. So we have a various channel. We have a community call every week. A lot of people reach us on GitHub, but also on the chat. We have a Mattermost channel on the Eclipse Mattermost instance, and we have a mailing list. So when all the decisions get communicated there, so we want to know if because we have multiple companies working with Che, and that means that we need to make sure that everybody agrees with that. So we need to make everything in the open. Other thing is that it's Kubernetes native, so it's we benefit of a powerful workspace scheduler. That means if you want your workspaces, so your development environment, to be provisioned in one particular type of node of your cluster. For example, nodes that have an SSD disk, so that your compilation will be faster, or Git cloning will be faster. You can use Kubernetes for that, and we're able to have affinity labels that will make sure that development environments will be scheduled on the right node of the Kubernetes cluster that has enough RAM, enough CPU, and a good disk, because development environments require a lot of resources. And the other things about resources is that in Kubernetes and then in Che as well, it's possible to specify exactly how much memory, CPU, and disk will be available for the development environment. Whereas if you go in Codespaces, I can show that briefly. For Codespaces, you are able, so there is a Codespaces in the menu here. It's possible to change the machine type. You have basically these are actually the 3 options that you have. You cannot go above that, so 8 cores and 16 gigabytes of RAM, and you cannot go below this one, the basic one. With Che, you can go, you can decide on whatever you want. So here you always have 32 gigabytes of storage. So maybe those are things that may change when it will be general available, but that's what I see today. So, and with Che is actually possible to change that for every workspace using the dev file specification. So, and the last thing is that it's an extensible platform in the sense that a lot of companies are taking Che and are actually customizing it and are making that part of their services, their internal services. It's possible to customize all the look and feel, but it's also possible to change the images, the different stacks that you have. Because when you actually start Che, let me go on. Yeah, that's a local instance that I have of Che. When you started, you have that's the look and feel. Those are like the default examples that you have, but all those things here are customizable. And yeah, that's something that is let user extend the platform. So that was the last slide I had. So these are like the references. Mainly I wanted to mention, so these are like the 3 most important things. So the GitHub Codespaces documentation. So there is everything is on the GitHub documentation for Codespaces. Then there is the Eclipse Che website for Che, of course, that links to documentation, etc. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that there is a really good Eclipse source blog post, so from Jonas and Maximilian, that goes into detail. They have already covered that. If you're curious, that's really good. They go in deep between the differences between Che and Visual Studio Code Online. So that was during the transition between Visual Studio Code Online. It was called Visual Studio Code Online. Now it's GitHub Codespaces, but basically the most of the things that have been said here in this blog post are still valid. So that's an interesting. So that's Brian. That's it. That was my last slide. So if there is any question, I will be happy to answer it.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that was Super Mario. Thank you. Very informative. One question that came in earlier that I answered, but I just want to double check with you that I answered correctly. It was could you also run Thea locally with a remote Che? And my answer was not quite yet, but Thea Blueprint, which is the desktop installer version of Thea, was launched in alpha recently, and likely something could be built connecting the two. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean there is the answer, the honest answer should be no. So it's not, because there is nothing that has the level of integration that Codespaces has today with Visual Studio Code. That said, we have a few blog posts on how you're actually able to synchronize your the code on your remote Che with your local desktop. So you're able to actually use your local IDE, develop with the local IDE, and local IDE means TIA or Visual Studio Code or whatever. And this code is you're able to synchronize that with the Che instance, and then that makes it easy then to test your code using all the tools and the containers that are running in the Che workspace when you finish coding. So that's something that is possible to do, but require some technical and manual steps that are not really easy to achieve. So I hope that I provided an answer to the question.
Yeah, great. So just Olivier just dropped in the word price with question mark. So I'm not quite sure what he's asking here, but I presume it's, what's the cost of GitHub Codespaces versus Eclipse Che versus, I know we didn't explicitly include Code-Ready Workspaces in this conversation, but if you want to include that in the answer too.
So yeah, so for Codespaces, today that's free because it's in beta, so they're not charging. And as soon as it will become generally available, it will it will cost something. Of course, they will probably charge you as much as the correspondent VM on Azure would cost. So a VM with 8 core and 4 gigabytes, for example. So I don't know how much it costs, and those things are difficult to follow. So the cost of services today. So that's for Codespaces. For Code-Ready Workspaces. So for Che, of course, it's completely free to download it and install it wherever you want. You need to, if you do that locally, you can use a Minikube or a local cluster like Kind or Minikube, and that means that you can run it locally. But you can also run it in the cloud, so you will need to provision a Kubernetes cluster in the cloud. So it depends on the cloud that you're using. That's the cost. But as for Visual Studio Code, you will need an important amount of memory, an important amount of CPU, because development environments have a cost in terms of resources, that they consume a lot of memory, a lot of CPU. So yeah, those things have a cost. So even if you don't have to have a powerful local machine, you still need to pay for the RAM and the CPU in the cloud. That said, like Code-Ready Workspaces. So if you go on workspaces.openshift.com, that is currently free. You get 7 gigabyte of RAM for free. So you need to sign up. That's limited. The service is free, but it's limited in the sense that after 15 days, your account get deleted.
30 days now.
30 days, yeah. So after 30 days, you're able to, thanks for correcting me. So after 30 days, you don't have an account, and but you can recreate a new one. But all your changes that you need to save them, so to push the changes to the Git repository. But Yeah, that's a cool that's cool, and it's completely free, so you don't pay anything for that, and everybody can sign up today.
Are there any case studies of such Kubernetes deployments for Che? For example, TCO for on-premise. I presume that's something Red Hat might have done at some stage, right?
So what do you mean as cases?
I don't know. Again, it's a question that's come in, but it's just like example deployments, advantages, etc. And kind of related to another question. You know, where do remote IDEs really shine versus desktop IDEs? Yeah.
So for Red Hat customers, we have a lot of requests from customers that want to be really careful about security and want to have environments that are remote, so that developers don't need to install anything locally. So we get a lot of requests. So from bank, insurance companies. Those are like the I think that the first use case is this one. They want like an easy, modern IDE running in the browser. That's something that really appeals those customers. Then but the thing where I think that it's so beyond that use case, so banking and really secure, sensitive environment. The other place where Che shines, and so Web IDE in general shines, are like as a rapid secondary IDE. It's not it really doesn't compete. If somebody can use their desktop IDE, that's still they will be probably still more effective with their local IDE. If they work all the day with the local IDE, with respect with the Web IDE. But if they want to switch to another project, for example, rapidly switch to do a review of a pull request, or if they want to switch rapidly to an environment where they are able to debug something that happened, so an issue that has been opened and an issue tracker. So those are like, with a click, you're able to start an IDE that allows you to test the code of a pull request, or to test one precise branch of your code base to test a bug that has been opened. So those are like the scenarios where Che shines. Those are like it's not a replacement of the main desktop IDE. It's more like it allows you to switch the context faster. So it's more like for those scenarios that Che and Codespaces are really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, my personal take is that the lines will be blurred even further in 5-10 years' time, and remote will become default. I think for various reasons, such as, cost of deployment will go down, bandwidth, we've talked about, easier setup of environments. I think that's going to become more and more important. Enterprise level, but also at the individual developer level, that's going to become more and more important moving forward. Another question, I guess related as well, is do you have any customer deployments and experiences of Che usage at scale that you can talk about?
Yeah, so the first usage at scale is the hosted Che. So we have we've been having hundreds of concurrent users. So when I say hosted Che, it's workspaces.openshift.com. yeah, we have hundreds, and we have been running that now for 4 years. So we've been improving a lot Che, based on the experience that we had to run that. So so workspaces.openshift.com is probably the largest scale deployment today. And then we have other companies that are deploying also for code-ready workspaces. In this case, not Che. So on OpenShift, not on plain Kubernetes. We have a few successful customers. Others a lot that are trying Che and code-ready workspaces in not with a lot of concurrent users. Usually they start with one team, two teams, especially, and we have seen a lot of requests in the last year with the pandemic, so that customer wanted their developers to be able to connect from home to the development environment, without having to install in their on their laptop at home all the requisites for development. So we've seen an increase of the requests for that.
Great. I think that's it for the questions. I'll take one more last minute if there's any more out there. Okay, great. Again, thank you, Mario. This was very important and informative. And as you know, Che is an open source project. So if you're interested, please join us on GitHub, join us on our community calls, join us on Mattermost for real-time communication. And you'll find details about all of those on the Eclipse Che website. So we hope to see you around. But before you go, just some housekeeping and some announcements. So all the links for what I'm about to talk about are going to appear in the chat box. So please follow those links, check them out. Our next Cloud Tool Time is scheduled for June the 1st. The topic next time is going to be low-code development with Eclipse Dirigible, which is also an Eclipse Cloud Dev Tools project. And our speaker is going to be Jordan Pavlov from SAP. If you want to sign up yourself to be a presenter at Cloud Tool Time, just fill out that form down in the chat there. Or even if you don't want to present, but there's a topic that you want to hear and you think we might be able to find a speaker for you, we're quite happy to help you with that. So fill it out if there's a topic you're interested in. Down below, a green button is going to appear now. I think it's going to appear beside Ask a Question or somewhere around there under Mario and myself. Please fill that out. It will take you 1 minute, and it will help us improve future Cloud Tool Times. And lastly, recently we released a white paper, we as in the working group for Eclipse Cloud Dev Tools, on OpenVSX. So, you heard Mario talk today about the Open Visual Studio code extension marketplace at openvsx.org. So check that out. We encourage you to download it and find out more. And thank you to Mario. Thank you to you all for coming, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Bye, everyone.